Hello, hello. Welcome to the PG-ish podcast. I'm Erin, a corporate marketing manager by day, podcast host by night, and single mom to 2 young daughters 24/7. In short, PG-ish parenting is the cliff notes to personal growth as a parent. Since those kiddos are always watching and learning from the adults in their life, like you, PG-ish is parenting guidance-ish to support a life worthy of imitating. Welcome and enjoy. Best-selling author, renowned neuroscientist, and host of the top-rated and award-winning podcast, Cleaning Up the Mental Mess, Dr. Caroline Leaf joins me today to discuss scientifically proven steps to help children, and adults of course, recognize feelings and respond in a healthy way, which looks like replacing toxic thoughts with brain-building practices and developing resilience that will serve all of us throughout our lives. I think you're going to love this one, and I think you're going to love all of her resources, so stay tuned for where you can find them, which of course they're always going to be in the show notes, but she's going to explain them too. So check it out. Well, Dr. Caroline Leaf, I'm so excited to have you on PG-ish today.
Thank you.
You have created amazing tools and have started the conversation around mental health. And I do have to admit though, I stumbled upon your Instagram years ago, and I so appreciate the resource that you started there, but also your Friday funnies.
They're the best. I agree.
Yeah. I know I can count on you every Friday just to bring a smile to my face and actually breathe at the end of the week. So
thank you. Well, the laughing's so good for mental health. So there it's achieved the goal.
Yes, you did. You did. But I've already digressed. So you're a neuroscientist, mental health and mind expert, and you're actually from one of my favorite places on the planet, which is South Africa.
Thank you.
But I'm always curious, before we get into all the juicy stuff, how people end up in their careers. So could you just do a brief background of how you became interested in neuroscience and mental health?
Absolutely. Well, I've been in the field for almost 40 years now. So back in the 80s, we didn't speak as much about neuroscience as we spoke more about neurology and that kind of approach. So, but it was pretty much what's now translates into neuroscience. I've been doing research in the field of psychoneurobiology, which is mind, brain, body connection for around 38, 40 years. Now I still do clinical trials. It informs all the systems that I develop and our mental health technology platform, and everything is research based, all the books I write. And then also I practice clinically for 25 years. So I use the neuroscience techniques in clinical practice, but I don't use, there's different ways of looking at neuroscience. Neuroscience, there's the one way where it's very current sort of model of about 40 years now that people talk about the brain being everything and that the brain produces the mind. The other side is that the mind and the brain are separate and that the mind changes the brain responds to the mind. So the mind is embodied in the brain and the body. That's the angle I come from the research I've done, and people in my field, we believe it's more accurate because it's called psychoneurobiology, mind, brain, body connection. Because basically, if you think of it, we're alive now and having this conversation and we're changing, our brain and body are changing in response. That's called neuroplasticity. But if you were dead, nothing would be happening. So mind is definitely something beyond just the physical brain. And so to reduce everything down to just the physical brain is a problem. So in the 40 years I've been in the field, I've watched that happen. I've watched the excitement of neurotechnology come into play where we could see inside the brain and, you can do these blood flow and all these things, and you can start seeing the response in the brain. And it became so dominant, that idea that people reduced everything down to, it's the brain. And the concept of mind and brain became one. Mm-hmm. So my work has been very much around watching this happen and trying to create a counter movement at the same time, to understand what is mind, how it's separate from the brain and the body, how the mind changes the brain and the body, how the body and brain feed back into the mind, and then how that plays out in our mental health, just being a human, to the extreme stuff of trauma and brain damage and neurological issues and things like that.
Yeah. No, thank you for that explanation too. I think it has been easy for people to compartmentalize them, but they're all connected and they're all going to be responding.
Yeah.
Well, I have 2 daughters and they're 10 and 12. And I'm hyper aware of the conversation that's happening around teenage girls right now and their mental state. So you've done all this research. What is your take on the state of children today?
This is the most pathologized generation. So your daughters both fall and just in the alpha generation and not the Gen Z, but they're going into Gen Z soon. Gen Alpha, Gen Z, and and the millennials are all the most pathologized, but of the three, your children's age group is the most pathologized. And what I mean by that, it's so sad because our natural human responses to life, which is being a human, the good, the bad, the ugly, the suffering, the joys, all that kind of thing, has been subsumed or reduced down to symptoms, and emotions have been almost like seen as these bad things that we have to eliminate. And experiences have been, as soon as a child of whatever age is starting to show certain symptom or certain behavior patterns or certain emotions that are considered or deemed problematic, they get labeled as a symptom of a disease. So this generation is actually sitting with, and they literally immersed in a generation of, oh my gosh, I feel sad. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with my brain. And that is really bad. What we see from the research is, and it's been, there's this change in the mid-90s to now where the technology really leapt in terms of our advances. You can track the advances in the technology of the brain, and you can track the decrease in mental health. They parallel each other. And the studies show that the more you focus on just the mechanistic physical aspects and you don't deal with the human aspect of, I'm like this because of something that I'm going through, the context of my life, my experiences are impacting me, changing my networks, that's driving me, but it's the experience. If I eliminate that process of the experience becoming part of me and driving how I show up, and I just look at how I show up and label them good or bad, you're going to have a problem. And that's what the research shows. You're going to have an increase in mental health issues, in physical problems, people like dying younger from preventable lifestyle diseases. That whole approach of medicalizing misery and that kind of thing has been so disproved, yet it's still the dominant narrative. So that's also the reasons, very strong reasons for why I wrote the current book on how to help parents help their children clean up their mental mess, which is how to help your child clean up your mental mess. This one is to put into the hands of parents, teachers, caregivers, grandparents, a way of helping a child to understand what they're exposed to understand how to read the signals of when they're on too much social media, or when someone is doing something to them that shouldn't be happening, or they're experiencing things at school that are hard, that will happen. You know, there are mean girls, there are mean boys, there are groups, there are bullies, it's life. How to understand that, to have the narratives, to tell their stories, to have the mental skills to be able to cope. That has been taken away. That is not a big emphasis.
Yeah.
It's very much this generation, and you would have experienced this as a mom with children this age. Your child does one thing maybe twice, and they've suddenly got a concentration problem. They've suddenly got ADHD, or they have a couple of moods or emotions. I mean, your 12-year-old, she's an adolescent. Adolescence just by its nature is bipolar. So it doesn't mean, it's not a disease. It's a time in our children's lives where their emotions are so heightened. And at the same time, there's all the hormone things. And at the same time, they're starting to ask those existential questions, your 12-year-old versus your 10-year-old. And put that all together, they're also becoming very aware of their impact on other people's lives and how other people see them, and you've probably seen this difference between your 10 and your 12-year-old at the moment. And that's not a pathology. That is an experience that we need to help them go through. And same thing with your 10-year-old versus an 8-year-old versus a 5-year-old. It's how we help them experience that. And that's been so damaged, or not damaged. That's just been almost eliminated in lieu of a diagnostic label based on symptoms that you need to eliminate, which works for the body, but doesn't work for the mind.
Yeah. Well, as you were saying all that, I mean, something that came to mind was when we put these labels on, we're taking away the opportunity to have that conversation too,
exactly.
of the human experience, because it's not a one size fits all for everyone. So if we're not talking to our kids or even ourselves, because we all struggle with labels, we have to feel through it and process it rather than just be like, this is who I am and like done deal. So
exactly. And that involves managing your mind. It involves self-regulation. It involves standing back and observing yourself and teaching your children how to do this and allowing yourself to be a mess. We're all a mess. We're all a bit crazy. We're all battling. There's no normal brain. According to research that have come out of extensive research, we're all unique, and that's not being allowed in this current generation.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I love that because we are all unique, and yet we're in the society that just wants to put us into a box, like all of us in a box, and just, down a factory line of this is how you're going to be, this is how you're going to turn out, this is who you are.
Yeah. And it doesn't work like that. And it's making things very hard, very, very, very hard for our younger generation. There's a lot of, I work with a lot of different psychiatrists and things, and there's one of my psychiatrist friends made such a good comment saying that if you ask a teenager why they're depressed under the current model, they'll say, oh, because I've got a brain disease or I've got a chemical imbalance. Then they'll say, but why have you got a chemical imbalance? Oh, because I'm depressed. Why are you depressed? Because I've got a brain disease. It's a circular reasoning. If you're feeling depressed, that's not abnormal. That's totally normal. It's a very helpful emotion. And if you shift your perspective and say, okay, I feel depressed. Where do I feel depressed in my body? How's it affecting my behaviors? How's it affecting my outlook on life? And why? And be curious and explore and go deep and then say, okay, well, this is what's happened. I'm feeling depressed, not because it's an illness. I'm feeling depressed because it's telling me something that's going on in my life. It's not who I am. It's not that I'm a diseased brain. It is that I'm experiencing life as everyone does. And I'm having a very normal depressed reaction when my friends are sending bad, texts to me or something like that. That would make anyone depressed.
Right. And I mean, those emotions, those feelings are just information. They're not who we are, like you said. So yeah, no, that's so good. I do want to take a step back to focus on the parents real quick, because I know my generation, I think we're all kind of reparenting ourselves because our parents, no parent knows what they're doing, right? So we're all
parenting is the messiest thing. I have 4 adult children, 1 grandchild, and let me tell you, I'm still learning. So
right. So for all of us who probably didn't grow up in the most ideal environment, I think all of our parents did the best they could. But if we're trying to figure out how to clean up our own mental mess and then show this to our children too, because I mean, our children are learning from us how to be the adults. So it's like, it goes back to that vicious cycle of like, who's teaching whom and like, how do we do this? So for the parents who might be overwhelmed though, thinking about, evolving themselves and helping their children, where does a parent even start?
I'm so glad you asked me that question, Erin, because I think it's one of the most important questions. I often get asked, if I had to do one thing to help the mental health crisis currently with children, what would I do? And my answer is always start with the parents, because educate the parents, help the parents. There's been so much, and you'll know about this being a mom and everything. There's so much insta therapy, but there's also so much blame the mom for everything. And unfortunately, this has been through the ages, and parent blame, and these whole movements of people getting stuck in their trauma because, it's all because of what I experienced in childhood. Now, please, I've done tons of research. I'm not denying the fact that early childhood trauma has got long-lasting effects. And a lot of the work I do and my patients in therapy was working through those traumas and how it impacted everything back down to how they functioned at school. So that's very relevant. But we can't get stuck constantly going down that blame game of blaming our parents. And that. So the way I always try to explain it is that as an adult, as a parent, we've got our stuff that has come through from our being parented. So our parents messed up our lives. So we're going to mess up our kids' lives. We all mess each other's lives up. If we can accept that reality, then we can say, okay, so I'm going to do things that are messing up my kids. My parents did things that messed me up, but I can honor the fact that they were going through stuff and they were messed up by their parents. So they did the best that they could in the situation. But I also have the right to deal with the impact of that mess on my life. So I'm honoring what they went through and recognizing without blaming that those were issues. But at the same time, recognizing I do have the right to work on my own impact. And when I do that, then I'm teaching my children the same thing. We are teaching, then, we know then, okay, I'm going to mess up my kids, bottom line. So let me look for the impact of that. Let me allow my child or children to be able to say, hey, mom, when you yelled like that, or when you pulled that face, or when you did that in front of my friends, or when I'll never forget my one who's 29, who was 12, your daughter's age, and she had a friend over and she said something that I didn't want to she brought up something that wasn't something that you share with a friend, and it was so innocently done. She wasn't trying to do, but my reaction was very strong. And, I got really angry with her and I embarrassed her in front of her friend, and it took her a while, a couple of months before she actually was able to verbalize that back to me, because I didn't see, her withdrawing, because I'm in the field and I missed it. I mean, you miss things all the time. It's okay. But I created an environment where they could bring the stuff up. So she did bring up, she said, Mom, when you did that and you pulled that and you embarrassed me, you did this. And what I'm trying to say is we need to create environments for our children to be able to talk about the impact that we as parents make on their lives, so that they can then have that collaborative discussion, understand what went on, understand from our perspective, which builds empathy, collaboration. We can say, sorry, you're teaching them so many different things, as opposed to, what's wrong with your behavior? Why are you being difficult? they're not being difficult. They don't know how to manage the experience they had with you. And if you don't give them the words or the opportunity to be able to share that, that blocks their functioning, and that can build, that will springboard over into all the little things that you then do unintentionally will then build and build and build. But if you've opened the door, you've opened the floodgates, and it starts with you as the mom and dad and the parents to own their own stuff. So in other words, we need to be working on ourselves. We need to say, I'm sad, I'm angry, or maybe you come home from work and you are just withdrawn and you're not friendly and you've got that look on your face that my kids call it the Queen Victoria look, where I'm just like scary face. And maybe I'm just not connected and friendly or something like that. They're all adults now, but they always tease me about this. So I need to be able to say, okay, guys, I'm sorry. I was short tempered. I was irritable. I had my Queen Victoria face on. You just mentioned your emotions. I was irritable. Behavior. I was frustrated. My emotions. I had that physical reaction. Today it just hasn't been a good day perspective. In other words, I'm identifying and gathering awareness for them. Then I would say, do a bit of reflection. Today was just a hard day, but I had this conversation with my best friend, and if you just misunderstood each other and it's really been worrying me or whatever, or at work something happened. So you give them the why, and then you invite them to collaborate with you, and you say, I don't know quite what to do about this, but I need to, if I just, and maybe if I, just maybe write it down or just visualize it and describe it more and invite them in, that you then can start a whole reconceptualization together. They may say, well, Mom, why don't you just text them and tell them how it hurt you? I mean, it could be something so simple that why didn't I think of that? But then you go text them. So in other words, what you've done is you said to your child, I'm messy. It's okay to be a mess. I recognize the impact on you guys. This is why I've done it. I need to solve it. This is what I'm going to do to solve it. And in that way, you're modeling for them, because kids are authentic. They read body language better than adults. Yeah. They are way more insightful than we give them credit for. So by us demonstrating how we're managing our mental health, then you allow them to, I can also be messy. I can, Mom is, I can be. And I have a system. I can do what she did. I can go through those little steps. And that's the system developed called the neurocycle that helps you go through these steps that actually activate and bring, almost like shining a light on that network in your mind and body. And you bring that into the conscious mind, and you can actually change what's wired in your brain and change what that looks like. But at the same time, you're honoring the emotions, you're honoring the experience, you're honoring that it's okay to be messy. And, that suffering, you maybe not be able to solve that problem, but you sharing it with someone, you allowing yourself to process it. All those things, those are not pathologies. That's life. That's basic life skills.
Exactly. I love that ownership piece, because I think it's too easy not to be responsible for ourselves and even demonstrate that to our children.
Exactly.
I grew up with my dad, and, men and women just speak differently. And I think for many years, I embraced like how he parented me. And it was just like, you just kind of shut down and close the door. And, with daughters, especially, it's like, we're always talking. I am getting that feedback, asking for that feedback.
Yeah.
It's more of a dialogue, and being able to share in that mess is so important.
That's so important. No, that is really important. And it creates such wonderful bonding between you and the child, that collaborative relationship, and as opposed to you being the adult hiding your stuff. And I know my parents grew up with it too. They couldn't show, it was like almost like it's wrong to show weakness. I remember when I would say sorry to my kids and I would show my weaknesses and work through them, my mom would say, but you mustn't show them that you're weak. You mustn't say sorry to them. You're the parent. You must control discipline. I said, no, that's not how I parent. I'm not going to do that. I respect that you did that, but it was not good for me at all. And I don't believe that, that sort of thing. So yes, there's different parenting styles and there's also, now there's the extreme side. There's extreme, you can go extreme too, where you can. It's to find your balance is so important.
Yeah. And something else that you reminded me of was just kind of the narrative with a lot of moms today is like you said, taking on that mom guilt and shame. And it's just like, clearly that's not healthy, but almost we're so good at absorbing everyone else's feelings. It's like, okay, just bring it on. And it's like, we got to let that go and try a different thing.
The mom guilt is huge. In fact, I've got an app, I don't know if you're aware of it, called the Neurocycle app.
Yes.
And it's a mental health technology platform, and that the whole system for doing this, everything we're talking about is in there. And I've actually got one there for mom guilt. I've actually just added one in because it is, and you're always going to have it. So it's a fact. Parents are going to have guilt. But the fact is, what are we going to do about that? Because if we don't deal with our guilt, it affects our parenting and affects ourselves and our relationships. So it's to actually say it's okay to be a mess. I feel guilty. Okay, let's actually unpack this guilt. Let's reflect on why. What is the guilt? Where is it coming from? What's the source? what is actually maybe a better way of handling it? And then, if you do that, then you don't have this network that's like a tree that's exploding and falling apart. And because our networks in our brain look like little trees, and they look like little rolled up carpets in our cells of our body, and they look like waves of the sea in our mind. So we've got all these representations of our experiences. And here we have this guilt, and it's generating this energy, and it's attached to something. So if we can find what it's attached to and process, it'll make us a better parent. It'll make us more authentic. Authenticity, it's so close to authenticity, kindness, love. They all go in the same, the source is love, but that authenticity and the kindness and the gentleness and the firmness, that is what we need to activate.
No, I agree. Well, we briefly touched upon it, but why don't you give us an example of how the neurocycle works? And I would say I do have the neurocycle app on my phone, and it is great. So,
oh, that's good. I'm so pleased. I don't know if you saw, we just added the parent add-on. It was a couple of days ago, actually. So there's now so you scroll along, you can actually see the parent add-on, and it's like a whole lot of different neurocycles you can walk through, and parent guilt's one of those.
That's great.
So basically the neurocycle I developed over 38 years ago, it's not a technique. It's not a new therapy technique. Doesn't replace breathing, meditation, CBT, ACT, all these different things that you still do, whatever you are doing in your life to help you manage whatever it is that you're going through. You still use that. But the problem is, what I've found is that our mind builds life into our mind-brain-body network, like I mentioned, in a certain way. And it stabilizes, and then that's what drives us. So if we're going to deal with stuff that has happened to us, like in the past, or deal with things that are happening in our current life, everything that happens to us is in this network. So we need to have a way of disassembling that network, and when it's disruptive, understanding that network and disassembling it and reconstructing it. You can't ever eliminate what's happened to you. You can't ever eliminate how your dad brought you up, but you can take that and change it and change how it plays out into your future. So how you parenting your children, which is obviously what you're doing. But that change requires changes in the network. So what I found a problem in therapy and all these great ideas out there is that there's a lot of different things that you can do. But if you don't do them in an organized, sequential way, you won't actually rewire the networks, and you won't do them to habit if you don't do them over enough time frames. So I wanted to understand, what is the process in recognizing when something's disruptive, like maybe the parent guilt? And how do I go from that guilt as a parent to turning it into something that can actually work for me? And that's, for example, where the neurocycle would step in. Let's say it's an example of maybe parents going through a divorce and children are dealing with that and they're not talking about it, and that's wiring to the child, and they grow up into adulthood with, not being able to form decent relationships. That's an experience that's wired in. So as an adult in relationships that just don't seem to work, you need to do that inner child work. So you need to know, how do I read why I'm having these relationships? How do I go into the depth and process and find the source code? What's the origin, and how do I deconstruct that and change that code so that I can actually work? So that's what the neurocycle does. It's a scientific process. It's got 5 basic steps and a preparation phase. And it pretty much helps you, when you use it, you are aligning the psychoneurobiological network to create the change. And then over the time frame it takes everyone talks about 21 days to form a habit. It actually takes at least 3 cycles of 21. So it takes about 63 days before your networks are strong enough to impact how you change. So let's say you have a social media habit, like our teenage girls getting stuck in a scare that's happening recently with the body disorder, the body image issues and eating disorders, and because that's the ideal body, and they're scrolling through 6 hours a day or whatever, looking at what's body, and their whole identity is wrapped up. Now, whatever you think about the most is growing. So you scroll through that for, even if it's 3 hours or 2 hours a day, 1 hour, but you're doing it consistently. That is energy that's going in, and it's adding another root to the tree, and it's making the tree stronger and stronger. And it's like feeding that tree, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Whatever you think about the most grows. So your neurocycle enables you to then recognize the impact of that, of that habit, and to see, okay, some of the behavioral issues here are eating disorders, and some of the emotional stuff is a total identity crisis. If I don't look like that, I have no value. There's the physical sensation in the body of, there's a starvation in the body, whatever. There's a perspective of I'm useless unless I look in a certain way. But the neurocycle would help in a situation where, in terms of this body dysmorphia thing, is to be able to help your child recognize, okay, what is this making me feel when I look at the social media? How am I feeling? when you feeling is a signal. It's not, it's information. It never lives alone. Where am I feeling this? Sure, you may be starving yourself. That's more of a behavior. So that would be the third one, behaviors. But what does it make you feel? And maybe they say it feels like my heart's crashing in my chest, or I've got a tight chest. That's very often a sign of, that stress, where you have that physical reaction in your heart because your mind drives how your heart functions. So if you've got the stressful information coming in and you're thinking about it, it actually affects how your heart feels. So you want to find out where it's. And then you also want to look, what is your perspective? Well, I have no value unless I look like that. I'm not going to be accepted unless I look like that. So what you've done is you've helped them identify 4 warning signals. You've gathered awareness. So the very first step of the neurocycle is to very specifically and organize the brain and mind body connections, very organized. So it's not just a random, let's talk about our feelings. That's not enough. If you just talk about your feelings, or let's become mindful, those are great to do. But on their own, they're dangerous, very dangerous. If you just talk about your feelings, your child or you will crash. If you just become mindful, what do I do with what I'm mindful? You'll crash too. Right. And there's a good chance you'll develop suppressing coping mechanisms and whatever. So we want to help our children and ourselves develop the mental skills of identifying exactly how I feel. So it's 4 sentences. Then you say, okay, I've gathered awareness. Now let me reflect on that. Let's see, are there more emotions? Are there more behaviors? Are there more perspective changes? Are there more sensations in your body? When is it happening? Who, what, when, where, why, how? So you start reflecting. Think of reflecting as if you shine a white light through a prism. It comes out in multiple colors in a rainbow. So it's going deep. Then the important thing is to, when you've gathered and reflected, first step, gather, second step, reflect, is you want to write that down. So you just grab a piece of paper and draw a circle in the middle and write body dysmorphia or body image or whatever the thought is you're working on. And 4 lines coming out of that middle. And then the one is emotions. And then you just write the emotions coming out of that. Try to put everything on lines or in bubbles or in circles, whatever. Then the other one, it's emotions, behaviors, bodily sensation, perspective. And then just say, what else? What else as you're looking at this, what else comes to mind? And write as much as you can all over the page, branches, patterns, not journaling. So you don't want to go one word at a time. You want to create patterns, which stimulates a lot of, it loosens up the network because you want to try and get down to the root of the tree. Yeah. And then you look at what you've written, so that's the third step, right? So it's gather, reflect, write. The fourth step is then to reconceptualize. It's to now look at what you've written and make sense of it. It's the therapy side almost. It's the, okay, this has happened. What can I do? What's the antidote? What are the activations? What are the triggers? If it happens every time when I'm with this particular group of people, and when I look at the social media, scroll through Instagram for that amount of time, that's the pattern. Okay, how can we break the pattern? How can we look at it differently? What's true? Is it really true that you have to have that kind of body to be accepted? Let's maybe have a look at all the different body. Let's have a look at and have a discussion about what it really does look like. That people are all different and, that kind of stuff. So that's what you would do in the fourth step. And then the fifth step is, okay, what action can we take today that will help us? So maybe we, instead, every time you feel the need to look at that social media, look at it, but look at it differently and see, okay, look at it and see how it's affecting you as you look at it, and then see if you can counterbalance that by looking at, maybe you've got some books or something, or a podcast. There's some great podcasts out there, for example, Loving Your Body at Every Size, and, that kind of thing, and understand. And I know it's very hard for a teenager who wants to be thin or something like that, right? How to deal with that. But it's the more you educate, the more you help them understand, the more you talk, the more they can then learn to accept. The big thing there with that would be to reconceptualize that value is not in what you physically look like, value is in who you are, which for teenagers is almost impossible to accept, but they will get there eventually if you have enough conversations. So that's the neurocycle. Gather awareness, reflect, and write, recheck, and then active reach. Okay. So it's 5 steps. It's always a good idea to prepare first. And when you prepare, that's things like breathing, meditation, decompression. So if your child's really worked up or you really worked up, to do the cognitive work of the neurocycle is pretty hard. Yeah. And you can put all kinds of things in there. So you need to be quite focused. So you need to calm down first. And if you're very worked up, your neurochemistry is going crazy, your energy from the tree shooting out, your electromagnetic energy, all the stuff that's very real is happening in your body. Right. So it's important to decompress or to prepare. And those are things like breathing, meditation. There's so many different things. I have lots of examples in the book and the app. And that you can teach to young kids too. This whole process you can teach as young as 2 and 3. Those are my youngest patients. You just obviously adapt it down, and the language in the book, and these cartoons, and we've even got a little plush toy we've created called Brainy, which is the cartoon in the book. I don't know if you've managed to see the book, but there's cartoons throughout the book. So Brainy is the character that walks your mental health journey with you and has got a superpower called the neurocycle. And the neurocycle is just basically how do we process this experience? And the processing aligns with the mind-brain-body connection. So it brings the network up so that you can change it. So you can fix the tree. So with kids, you'll tell them we're going to heal the roots. Look, there's the roots. The roots are all ugly and horrible. And even with 10-year-olds, you can say, look, the roots aren't great. So let's actually heal the roots. How can we heal the roots? That's happening a lot in step 4 is the healing of the roots. The first 3 steps are opening up and kind of digging the sand away so you can see the root. And then the 4th step is healing the roots. And then the 5th step is how can we practice this healing? Now that you do daily over time, as you know from doing the neurocycle. One neurocycle won't fix a trauma. One neurocycle won't fix that social media habit. One neurocycle will help you in the moment if you lose your cool, or if one of your kids is, they're having a little argument, or if there's some minor day-to-day struggle. So anything that's just a little minor thing, you can use a neurocycle in 30 seconds. It will help you. But if you're trying to change a habit, you're going to have to spend around 15 minutes a day for at least 63 days. If you're fixing a trauma, which is terrible things that have happened to us, then that's going to take maybe multiple cycles. That's the bird's eye view.
No, that's great. I have read your book. It's amazing, especially just the simplicity for parents to walk through each phase of the neurocycle. And like you said, the drawings are great. They really help you break down, especially if you're walking through it with kids, to understand what's happening and why we're doing it. I think that's super important, is giving kids the language, because I think they feel all this, but they don't know how to articulate it. So giving them that language to move forward and to heal is so important.
And if they see you doing it as the parent, that's the model that you're modeling. And both parents are doing it, and grandparents and uncles and people that are relevant in their lives. If they see them doing it, it becomes, I saw this in the family therapy, and I've seen this over the years as people just have read the techniques. And we even have getting a lot of feedback from the book of people that are just 5 and 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds are watching their parents and saying, they relate. I want to do the neurocycle. I want that superpower, and learning to go through those steps. And even if they just do step 1 initially, and then you walk them through the others over time, it's helping them to get organized, getting the thoughts organized, which really helps.
Well, maybe we should have talked about this earlier, but why is it important to regulate our nervous system and clean up our mental mess?
That's a great question. So there's a lot out there about regulating the nervous system. It's become very trendy, and the vagus nerve, and it's once again, it's very physical, and all those things help. But your mind is pretty much all of who you are. So your mind, if you don't, messy mind, messy brain, messy body, messy life.
Yeah.
So we can spend a lot of time on the physical and taking lots of supplements and doing all the biohacking and doing all the vagus nerve stimulation and all that stuff. But if we don't follow that with mind work, that's to go beyond that, then which is what the neurocycle is basically, that how you do the mind work. You can put, like, for example, in the neurocycle, in the active reach, it could be to watch a podcast is your action. It could be to a positive affirmation. It could be, if your child's having nightmares, doing lucid dreaming exercises. In other words, the system isn't restricting you from using anything else. It's enabling you to learn the whole process of self-regulation. So self-regulation begins with recognizing, my heart's beating, I can't focus, I'm so worked up, I'm just going to cry, I'm going to have a panic attack, or I'm in a panic attack. It's recognizing that state and knowing how to calm yourself down, whether it's havening, whether it's saying 5 things you can see and 3 things you can smell, and whatever, that kind of thing, or whether it's breathing in for 6 counts, holding for 6, out for 6, in for 3, out. There's so many beautiful ways. I have lots in the app and in the book. That just gets your neurophysiology under control. And that would be one part of that self-regulation. But it doesn't fix the problem. If you stop there, it's almost like a pilot in an airport. They do all the preparation, but they don't take off. And so you go nowhere. And so you prepare, but you don't go anywhere. So you've got to follow preparing with taking off. The plane's got to take off and go somewhere and land.
Yeah.
That's what the neurocycle is doing. It's the brain is, the self-regulation part is coming in, the physical self-regulation is coming in the preparation. Then the 5 steps are helping, the gather awareness is taking off. The reflect and the write and the recheck are flying, and the active reach is landing. So you're doing these nice cycles and putting into those whatever works for you.
Yeah. I like that analogy for sure. And I think too, just that awareness and that curiosity to change to actually put in the time for the neurocycle. I mean, I think you have to be in that right mindset too, to even follow through.
That's so good because, and I'm glad you brought that up, Erin, because we understand physically, like if your child's learning a musical instrument, we know it's going to take months to practice. If they're doing some sport at school, we get that. If you go to the gym, all of us get that. When it comes to the physical, we understand time. When it comes to the mind, we want an instant quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot because of what's happened over the past 40 years, the move towards the physical being more important than the mind. And so it's kind of like, well, if I do all this physical, my mind will get under control. But it's not necessarily the case. It will definitely help. Like we know walking helps depression and we know, but it doesn't fix the problem. So you do those more as preparation. And we've got to recognize, but to change the mind. I mean, there isn't, if parents want a quick fix for mental health, I can't give it. No one can. No medication is going to fix it either. The tablet, an antidepressant isn't actually an antidepressant. It's actually what we call a psychotropic psychosomatic pull, which is changing the brain and numbing emotions. So it's not fixing anything. It's just numbing the intensity. And over time, that's not a great thing to do because you don't deal with your stuff. You know, it's like putting a Band-Aid on your hand, but not when your hand's on the stove, but you don't remove your hand from the stove. So the burning is still happening. So we can't fix it with that. So we've got to put in the work. We've got to learn, why am I putting my hand on the stove? Let me remove my hand from the stove. Let me work out, what is all the root causes of everything. And that takes time. And that's why I honestly encourage parents, mind is 90 to 99% of who you are. The physical, the exercise, the eating, all those are very important. And if you don't pay attention, they really do impact the mind. But they are somewhere between 1 and 10% of who you are. But we're putting 100% of our attention on the physical stuff, and we're putting very little attention on our mind. So to go to that point, in 63 days' time, if I've done none of this, my brain's still changed, but it's changed in a direction that's had no control. You're not directing the change. So if there is a bad habit, it's 63 days worse. If there is a problem with your child communication-wise, it's 63 days worse. So the effort that one puts in to learn this and to make this part of your lifestyle, it's very clumpy when you first learn something new, but you'll get into the rhythm. It'll take you about 63 days. You do a sort of complete cycle. I'm sure you maybe have experienced that. Then it becomes natural. And then you just use it all the time. Like I use it all the time. This is part of my life.
Right. Yeah. It just becomes who you are. I think there's a couple things that come to mind that you've already touched upon. And I know we're running out of time, but I think it's really important too, to just remember like where we're putting our focus and energy into, because that changes everything and it does affect your entire life. You can't be sad, but say you're happy. It's like you have to really focus and be intentional with your thoughts and what you do with your life.
Yeah. And then also allow yourself to be sad, not to think, well, gosh, I'm sad. There's something wrong with me. It's, that's sadness. Why am I sad? Be curious about it. Start that whole neurocycle process of, that sadness is not who I am. It's how I'm showing up currently. And it's also good for you. It's good to, I always look at it like this, was if I put my two hands and imagine that they're balancing those scales with the thing in the middle.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you've got all the emotions in here and we unfortunately label them good and bad, but they should just be emotions that are on this level, which are depression, sadness, anxiety. And the other side is happiness, joy, etc. So we need a balance to be empathic humans that understand the joys and the highs and lows of life. We have to have both.
Right.
And the problem is that if we ignore these and just focus on these get abnormal. You can lose your empathy. If these become dominant, then this can shift how you function as well. So you don't want any of these to dominate. They've got to balance. So in order to do that, we have to self-regulate. We have to manage our mind. We have to say, okay, I'm feeling depression. I'm feeling envy. That's okay. It's okay to be a mess. Why am I feeling envy?
Yeah.
Not, oh gosh, I'm feeling envy. There's something wrong with me. It's part of my ADHD or whatever that was thrown out there.
Yeah, no, exactly. And when it comes down to these identities that we take on for ourselves, how do you see like technology, AI, social media, like all of it? I mean, this is all new to most of us, like we didn't grow up with this technology, yet our kids are. So how would you suggest like approaching that and just like kind of standing true to who you are and being authentic and not getting wrapped up in all of that?
Great question. I actually wrote an article for Time Magazine on this, on the how to specifically around AI. So if they go to my social media page, Dr. Caroline Leaf, they'll see the link in there. They scroll down. So it's a nice summary, but I'll give you the summary version. There is nothing wrong with AI or social media. It's a fantastic technology, number one. So it's not the technology, it's how we as humans are managing it. So it's mind management. We have a mental health crisis, but that's a symptom of a bigger crisis. The bigger crisis is mind management. So mind drives us as humans. If we don't pay attention to our mind, we will see all these things that are currently happening. Same thing with social media. I mean, people and AI. I mean, some of those things thinking we're going to be like a cyborg and AI is going to take over. That comes from a lack of education, because that could never happen. You understand that the brain is run by the mind, and that all of us are just the uniqueness of humanity is not going to allow for that sort of situation to happen. To understand that, we need to understand and educate ourselves about these technologies and recognize where they can be problematic. Like there's the situations, scary situations of cloning voices with AI and then sending voice messages to people. There was that interesting one. I don't know if you heard that thing on the news. I think it was Fox News was talking about it. And that mother was contacted and said, I've got your daughter. I need $1 million. Meanwhile, it was a clone voice. So, we have to educate ourselves. That's mismatched. That is, that's where people are using actors' voices and to advertise things that they give them consent to. That side is just the bad side of humanity. So we need to say this is a good technology, unmanaged. These are the things that could go wrong. So these are the things you need to question. So if someone that is saying this, is it really them or is it AI? If someone, that kind of thing. And so it goes all the way through. So it's not to be scared of it, it's to educate, to embrace it. The other side of the coin is that every generation's faced things. It's not the first time we've had a plague or a war or a new technology. This is the nature of humanity. We keep changing. The first time fire came, there was going to, you look at it like that. So there's always change. It's got to do with management of change. And obviously every generation thinks, well, this change is more than previous generation, because we're just advancing in different ways. So we are dealing with more and more. But that's why we need some education and understand that whatever you are focusing on is growing into your brain and mind and body, and it's going to drive you. So if you spend hours every day looking at that particular, or reading that particular news or media or whatever, social media, or thinking about that, that's what's going to drive you. So that's the education that we need to give our kids. We need to understand that that technology is growing into my brain. Do I want that in my brain? Do I want that in my body? Do I want that driving who I am as a person? Is it actually developing me as a person? Is it who I am? Is it who I want to be? Is it who I want to become? Is it the truth? Those are the conversations we need to be having with our children and ourselves.
Yeah. Starts with us, right? That's so good. Because that's just with anything in life. We have to keep educating ourselves, have that awareness, and really pay attention to what we're feeding into our brain and how that's going to play out into our lives. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, as we wrap up, is there one piece of advice that you would give parents just to help themselves and their kids be mentally healthy?
Absolutely. I'll say it in two parts. First of all, you can't change what's happened to you or what you've done, what you've said, but you can change what it looks like inside of you, and you can guide your children to change what it looks like. When I say in you, psychoneurobiology, mind, brain, body network, because that's what drives you. So you can change what it looks like. You can change the roots, and therefore change how it plays out into the future of your child managing their life, or you managing your life, or your relationship with your child. So that's really key. You can't change what's happened to you, but you can change what's in you. And then mental health for your child starts with you. It's, there's so much research, and we know instinctively without the research that your anxieties goes through to the child. With the education, the way that the teachers are managing stress goes through to the child. So knowing that and knowing how authentic and insightful children actually are, it's to be so authentic and honest, and be honest about how you feel and what you're doing about it, and how you're managing it and how you're not managing it and how you're going to try and manage it. That's very, very important.
Yeah, no, that's such a good reminder. I think I have a very long commute to the school, drop off and pick up. And that's always my trigger, right? Of where I get super anxious. And I always have to constantly remind myself, it's all going to be okay. This is just what we're doing. But some days are harder than others.
Exactly. And that's okay. It's embrace those hard days along with the good days, because those hard days make the good days even better.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Caroline. This was great.
Thank you so much. I loved our questions. They were really great.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation and learned some tools to help yourself and your kiddo. Check out her book, How to Help Your Child Clean Up Their Mental Mess, a guide to building resilience and managing mental health, as well as her app, Neurocycle. Links to these can be found in the show notes. If you haven't already done so, please follow PG-ish on your favorite podcast platform. And if you found this conversation interesting or inspiring, please share this episode with a friend via text or on social or whatever platform you like, so that more parents can learn and grow alongside their kiddo like you. See you next time, my friend.